What's up guys? Today I'm going to be showing you what to look for when buying a laptop for entering college freshmen. So let's get started. Okay, so before we get to looking into any specific laptops, I'm just going to teach you some basics about the specs. If you already know about the specs of your laptop or about the laptop that you want to get, then you can skip to the timestamp shown on the screen. So as you can see, we're on Auburn University's website. We also have the University of Alabama and Mississippi State pulled up, but I'm just going to start with Auburn, and we're just going to look at the specs, and I'm going to teach you what we need to look for. So as you can see, the first thing on the list is processor. So what you need to know is that the processor is also known as a CPU. A lot of websites will just have it listed as the CPU, and it will need to be either an Intel i5 or equivalent, or an Intel Core i7. An AMD Ryzen 5 is also pretty much equivalent to an Intel Core i5. So I know Auburn over here only recommends Intel, but if you find a laptop that you like with an AMD Ryzen 5 processor, that will be just fine. So as you can see, I just have an example laptop pulled up here, and CPU model, it says Core i5, so we're good there. It may be important to know that if you see a laptop with an Intel Pentium or an Intel Celeron, that is not equivalent to an Intel i5. It will be a bit slower, so do not buy that. Now we can move on to RAM, which is also known as memory. Memory and storage are not the same thing. Storage always refers to this hard disk size or solid state drive size, but memory is always referring to RAM. So as you can see, we need 16 gigabytes of RAM or memory. If we go over here to this example I have pulled up, we can scroll down, and it says RAM memory 16 gigabytes. So that meets the requirements here. Now we have hard disk. Again, this is also known as storage. We can go back over here. It says hard disk size 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte is 1000 gigabytes, so that surpasses your 500 gigabyte minimum requirement here for Auburn. The next thing is a monitor. Now when it's talking about the monitor, it's not talking about the actual size of the laptop screen. This is for an external monitor if you wish to buy one. So it recommends a 24-inch external monitor, but of course this isn't actually required here. Now let's talk about the video card, also known as the graphics card or the GPU. For most majors, integrated graphics is just fine, but you may need to look more specifically into your major to know if you need an upgraded GPU or not. So again, let's just go ahead and look over here, and it says graphics processor Intel UHD graphics. This is integrated on Intel CPUs, so that is just fine. And then of course we need Wi-Fi and some speakers built into the laptop, which most laptops have speakers built into them. It also requires a 13-inch LCD. This one here is actually a 15-inch LCD, but the laptop you see on the video that I'm using right now is a 13-inch, and I would actually much rather the smaller laptop, simply because a larger laptop is heavier and just takes up a lot more space in your book bags. So first, what I'm going to do is show you a bad example of a laptop that you should not get. So I'm just going to continue using the same example, except this one only has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage, which as you can see does not meet the requirements of Auburn University's website, and therefore this is not a good option. But if you scroll down, you can see that there are multiple options here. We can get 16 gigabytes and 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage, which does meet the requirements. This laptop would be perfectly fine to get. Okay, so the first website we're going to start on is just Amazon. So it typically works best if you have a brand that you particularly want. So I'm just going to search Dell, but since you know what you're looking for now as far as specs, it's really easy. So as you can see, this is the one that we looked at earlier. It has 12 gigs of RAM, but you can upgrade that to 16. Okay, so here is a bit more budget model of a Dell laptop. Okay, so as you can see, this laptop here has 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gigabyte storage, as well as an Intel Core i7 8th gen. So the i7, this model will be 4 cores, and it's hyper-threaded, so it's basically like an 8-core processor. So this will be a great option for $323. So the thing about Best Buy is that most all of the options are brand new, so they're going to be a little bit more expensive than what you're going to find at Amazon. But as you can see, first thing we have is an HP with an Intel i7, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 512 SSD. Let's talk about this one for a minute. As you can see, it meets all the requirements. It is not a touchscreen, but this one would be a very solid option. It's got an HDMI port there, so you can plug it into a TV really easily. So before continuing to shop on Best Buy, I went to the side and I was able to put a filter on my search. So I put 16 gigs of RAM, 500 gigabyte storage, and I selected some brands here, and then you can select price range, $250 to $500. And here is a Dell Latitude. This is similar to one that we looked at on the eBay. It's got an Intel Core i5, 16 gigs of RAM, and 512 gigabyte storage. So that meets all the requirements. And this one's only $380. Let's check one more website, and that will be eBay. And one important thing to note here on eBay is the seller feedback. You don't want to buy something from someone with low feedback. So this one has 4,370 feedback. That means 4,370 people have left feedback on this page, and all of them have been 100% positive. So this number is how many people have left feedback. This is the percent of positive reactions. So I usually try to look for one at least in the thousands. If you're buying from someone that has either a low percentage or just not many at all, it is very possible that it could be a scam. I have bought from people with like 150 feedback, but they had 100% positive and it was just fine. But eBay, you do have to be more cautious because there are actual scams on eBay. So here's just a different option. We've got a Lenovo here. This one is brand new, $780. Seems like a solid option that we could buy. And it meets all the necessary requirements. And he has great feedback. Okay, so just to sum things up, I'm going to show you some of my favorite options. Now, most of these are $600 or less. If you want to find a more expensive model, they are very easy to find laptops over $600, as you saw earlier, with 16 gigs of RAM and a 500 gigabyte hard drive. So let's just get started. These will be linked in the description in the order of what I'm showing you here. So the first one is this Dell Latitude 2-in-1. This is basically exactly like the laptop I'm using now, except for it has an i5 instead of the i7, which this laptop does have. But it is only $316, and as you can see, it meets all the requirements. And I personally love this laptop. It's really easy to carry everywhere. Battery life is fantastic, and it is really fast. It plays most lighter games very, very well, and even some heavier games it can play pretty decently. The next one, I actually found this one on eBay just a few minutes ago. Now this one is an HP. It is not a 2-in-1, so it doesn't have the touchscreen, but as you can see, we have pretty good feedback here. But what I like about it is that you can get all the way up to 32 gigs of RAM, 2 terabytes of storage, and Windows 10 for only $414. This laptop actually might be the best deal that I will show you today as far as specs. It will take a lot to fill up 2 terabytes, and 32 gigs of RAM will actually get you through most any program that you need to run. You will have a very hard time filling up that memory. And it also has the i5 8350U, which is actually the same exact CPU that this Dell laptop has, so it will be a very solid system. I would highly recommend this one if it doesn't sell out before you buy it. Now we've got this Dell Inspiron. This was the very first one we looked at. Just make sure to select the 16 gigabytes of RAM option here, and you can actually get it for $589 as opposed to the 12 gigabytes option, which is $650. Next, I went to Best Buy just to check out some budget models here. We have an HP with an Intel i7, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 500 gigabyte SSD for only $468. And here's a slightly cheaper model, but this one is... The one we just looked at was 14-inch display. This one is a 15-inch display, so it is slightly larger, but it has an Intel i5 as opposed to the i7, so it might be just a touch slower. Okay, so that is all the laptops that I'm going to show you today. Of course, there are so many more options out there. You just have to keep an eye open. You can also even find some good options on something like Facebook Marketplace. Again, just try to make sure that they have 16 gigs of RAM at least. Honestly, the RAM or memory is more important to have over the large storage space. So if you want to save money, you can always get an external hard drive later on down the road. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comments below and I will try to get to them as soon as I can. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope everything made sense, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.